A brilliant high school student seems to have the perfect life. Top grades, polite manners, a future everyone admires. But after a disturbing assignment raises concern, one teacher begins to suspect something darker beneath the surface. Strange behaviors emerge, conversations become manipulative, and every accusation somehow turns back on the people questioning him. The deeper the adults dig, the more dangerous it becomes, because the scariest people aren't the ones who look suspicious. Sometimes they're the ones who seem absolutely perfect. Before that one assignment unravels the secrets behind this brilliant student, we get to see what life at the top is like for him. One morning, in a high school auditorium, parents, teachers, and students are all gathered for an assembly. At the podium is Luce, a calm, composed, and completely at ease student in front of a crowd. He delivers a speech thanking his teachers and his parents, and the applause that follows is warm and genuine. After his speech, he meets up with his adoptive parents, Amy and Peter Edgar, who stand beside him while his history teacher, Miss Harriet Wilson, tells them their son is an important example to the school. Luce smiles and nods. On the drive home, the family talks about Harriet. They talk about her with the mother calling her stern, and Luce and his father calling her a bitch. At dinner, Luce holds court the way he always does, sharp, confident, quick with an observation. Later that night, Amy goes to Luce's room to talk about his speech. She advises him to talk about his experiences as a child. She tells him to give a more personal perspective. The conversation ends on an awkward note. Not long after the auditorium speech, Amy gets a call from Harriet asking her to come in for a meeting. She goes alone. In the classroom, Harriet a paper, Luce's assignment on the desk in front of her. This is a paper Luce wrote for a history assignment where students were asked to write from the perspective of a historical figure. Luce chose Frantz Fanon, a Pan-African revolutionary philosopher who argued that colonialism could only be overcome through violence. The essay commits fully to Fanon's worldview and does not soften the ideas. Harriet tells Amy she understands it was an assignment, but she cannot set that concern aside given who Luce is, a boy who spent years as a child soldier before coming to America. Harriet talks about how, 10 years ago, Luce was a child soldier in war-torn Eritrea. The Edgars adopted him, brought him to America, and renamed him. Now he is a straight-A student, the star of the track team, captain of the debate team, and beloved by just about everyone at his school. She says that she is not making an accusation, she says, but she felt she had to bring it to Amy's attention. Then she pulls out the second thing, a brown paper bag she says she found during a search of Luce's locker. Inside it sit illegal fireworks. Amy defends Luce as a mother would do her child. Amy takes both things home. Luce, on the other hand, while getting dressed in the locker room, hears a ruckus and separates a physical altercation between his friend Deshawn and another guy, Orlicki. Their coach comes and asks if there is any problem. They say no, and the coach asks Luce to follow him to his office. Amy and Peter read the essay that evening and talk about it. Peter is suspicious of Luce, but Amy defends Luce much to the disdain of Peter. As they speak, Luce returns home. Amy quickly hides the things in a cupboard. Luce senses the tension, asking them if they want to talk to him about something. They say no, and they go to the dining table to have dinner. Harriet comes up at dinner, and Luce talks about her with careful frustration. He brings up two classmates. The first is his friend Deshawn, who was kicked off the track team earlier in the year after Harriet found marijuana in his locker and called the police on him, costing him his place on the team and his shot at a scholarship. The second is Stephanie Kim, a Korean-American classmate who was sexually assaulted at a party by several boys on the team, and who Harriet repeatedly uses as an example in class of women who stay silent about what was done to them. Luce tells his parents that Harriet has a habit of holding up minority students as symbols, Deshawn as a cautionary tale, Stephanie as a lesson, and Luce himself as her prize example of a black student who made it. He tells his parents he does not want to be used that way. After dinner, Luce is cleaning up the dishes while his parents have a tense conversation outside. As he is sorting the dishes, he comes across the hidden paper and the hidden bag. He puts everything back where he found it and says nothing. The next morning, he goes to Harriet's classroom and they talk through the essay. He is measured and reasonable. He says he followed the assignment prompt, that he is not Fanon, that he does not believe in political violence. Before he leaves, he asks Harriet what her favorite holiday is, and then mentions almost in passing that he loves Independence Day and that he loves the fireworks. He makes a small gesture with his hands, fingers splaying outward like an explosion. Harriet takes it as a threat and calls Peter that same day. Peter and Amy sit Luce down and ask about the comment and about the fireworks. Luce tells them calmly that the track team shares lockers and the fireworks are not his. Peter thinks he is lying. Amy is not sure what to believe. Amy messages Stephanie and meets with her quietly at a coffee shop. Stephanie reveals that she and Luce used to date, which Amy did not know. She then talks about the party. She was assaulted that night by several boys on the team. Luce was not one of them, she says. He actually stepped in and stopped it and stayed with her after. But he was there. He knew what happened and never told his mother. When Luce later finds out that Amy went to meet Stephanie, he asks his mother about it. He finds her in his room and confronts her about it. They have an altercation, and he calls her by her first name as against Mom, which he usually calls her. Harriet's life outside school is difficult in its own separate way. She has a sister named Rosemary who lives with a serious mental illness, and caring for her falls almost entirely on Harriet. There is an encounter at a supermarket where Luce and Rosemary cross paths, a brief and odd interaction that leaves Harriet unsettled. Later that same night, Rosemary tears apart the apartment, and Harriet has to take her back to the doctor. At a school car wash fundraiser, Deshawn shows up even when he has been kicked off the team. The coach tries to turn Deshawn away, but Luce talks to the coach lying that he invited Deshawn over to talk about an assignment. Luce tells him that he would make things right. Deshawn doesn't believe pointing out the gap between his situation and Luce's, the way Luce floats above consequences that swallow other people. Luce listens and repeats his promise. At a debate practice session, Luce is the lead prosecutor in a mock trial. Harriet and Principal Towson are watching. Luce builds his argument carefully around a central question: whether teachers have the right to go through students' belongings based on suspicion alone, and whether accusations made without proof can ruin a student's life. He never addresses Harriet directly, but asks her questions that would suggest that he is referring to her. Then Rosemary shows up at the school one afternoon. She walks through the hallway in the middle of the day, loudly calling out for Harriet, and when Harriet gets to her, she is already in the middle of a full breakdown. She pulls off her clothing in front of students and staff. The police are called. They tase her and take her into custody while Harriet pleads with them to cover her up. Students film everything on their phones before the principal orders them to stop. That evening, Luce sits with his parents and shows them the video. Amy and Peter watch it and are disturbed by what was done to Rosemary. Harriet's home is vandalized that same night. And then Stephanie appears at Harriet's front door and tells her that Luce sexually assaulted her. Harriet takes it straight to Principal Towson. A formal meeting is arranged with Luce and both his parents. Luce comes in with video evidence of his whereabouts at the time the assault allegedly took place. He is calm and organized, and Harriet's questions grow sharp and aggressive in a way that starts to work against her. Amy and Peter, who came into the room unsure of what to believe, end up firmly on their son's side by the time it is over. Stephanie, who was supposed to repeat her accusation in front of Towson, walks out of the building before she gets the chance. Harriet is still arguing when the principal has already decided. Towson lets Luce go. When the fireworks come up in the meeting, Amy looks at Harriet and says she knows nothing about any fireworks. She tells Towson that Harriet has been deliberately targeting her family. Towson accepts this. The meeting ends. That night, fireworks detonate inside Harriet's desk at the school and start a fire. The following morning, Towson calls Harriet in and tells her she is fired. The suspicion lands on her that she hid the illegal fireworks in her own desk rather than turning them over to the authorities when she first found them. Amy hears about the fire and drives straight home. She goes to the kitchen cabinet where she hid the bag. It is empty. The fireworks are gone. Peter tells Amy that he thinks Luce was behind it. Amy tells him they are going to stand by their son regardless. Luce shows up at Harriet's house with flowers. He tells her he is uncomfortable about what happened to her job. Then the conversation shifts. He talks about Deshawn, about the scholarship gone, the team gone, the future narrowed down to almost nothing because Harriet found weed in his locker and called the police. He talks about what it does to a person to be constantly held up as a symbol, to have every move watched and every choice loaded with meaning beyond what it actually is. Harriet listens and then pushes back. She tells him America put him on that pedestal, not her. That everything she did came from wanting to protect students like him and Deshawn and Stephanie. Then she goes further. She tells Luce he is calculating, that he uses other people to do the things he needs done so that nothing ever traces back to him directly. Luce doesn't agree with her. He doesn't deny it either. He looks at her for a moment. Then she tells him to leave. And he does. Amy follows Luce and finds him with Stephanie at a shelter. She watches through a window. Stephanie sees Amy standing there outside and does not react. She holds Luce's gaze and says nothing to him about it. Amy goes back home. She sits at the cupboard where she hid the fireworks and sees a picture of Luce as a child, and Luce walks in. He sits with her and laughs. He gives her a paper bag. When she opens the bag, she sees a small fish in a container with water. It resembles his childhood fish named Dennis that Luce threw across the room because he wanted to see it fly. He tells Amy that they should start over. They sit in the same room and look at each other. He finally calls her mom. Luce is giving another speech. This time he talks about his experiences and his parents. He gives a heartfelt speech and is applauded. Luce is seen on the street running. He is out on the street doing what he has always done, moving fast, looking focused, looking every bit like the person everyone at that school believes him to be. But his pace increases. He runs faster and faster, looking more and more agitated and breaking his perfect mask. In the end, the fireworks that ended Harriet's career were gone from the family home by the time Amy went to check, but nobody ever admits to touching them. Stephanie showed up at Harriet's door with a sexual assault accusation against Luce, then walked out of the office without repeating a single word of it, leaving Harriet completely exposed. Whether Stephanie was telling the truth, whether she was part of something Luce had already set in motion, or whether she simply lost her nerve, it's not said. What it does show, in pieces scattered across the whole story, is that Luce was ahead of everyone the entire time. The debate argument quietly aimed at Harriet while she sat in the room. The timing of Rosemary's breakdown, the way both Deshawn and Stephanie seemed to move exactly where he needed them to. None of it is spelled out. All of it points somewhere. And then he sits beside his mother with a little fish in a bag, calls her mom, gives a heartfelt speech, and the camera follows him out to the street where he runs alone with his face finally unguarded and cracking open. That's it for today's story, guys. But before you go, I gotta ask, if you were in Mrs. Wilson's shoes, what would you do to prove your suspicions? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more twisted stories like this.